How the wicked Tanuki was punished. The hunters had hunted the wood for so many years that no wild animal was any more to be found in it. You might walk from one end to the other without ever seeing a hare, a deer, a boar, or even hearing the cooing of doves in their nest, as if they were not dead but had flown elsewhere. Only three creatures remained alive, and they had hidden themselves in the thickest part of the forest, high up on the mountain. They were a gray-furred, long-tailed Tanuki, his wife the fox, who has one of his own family, and their little son. The fox and the Tanuki were very clever, prudent beasts, and they were also skilled in magic, and by this means had escaped the fate of their unfortunate friends. If they heard a twang of an arrow or saw the glitter of a spear ever so far off, they lay very still and were not to be tempted out from their hiding place, if their hunger was ever so great or the game ever so delicious. "We are not so foolish to risk ourselves," they said to each other proudly. But at length there came a day when, in spite of their prudence, they seemed likely to die of starvation, for no more food was to be had. Something had to be done, but they did not know what. Suddenly a bright idea struck the Tanuki. "I've got a plan!" he cried joyfully to his wife. "I will pretend to be dead, and you must change yourself into a man and take me to the village for sale. It will be easy to find a buyer. Tanuki skins are always wanted. Then buy some food with the money and come home again. I will manage to escape somehow, so do not worry about me." The fox laughed with delight and rubbed her paws together with satisfaction. "Well, next time I will go," she said, "and you can sell me." And then she changed herself into a man, and picking up the stiff body of the Tanuki, set off towards the village. She found him rather heavy, but it would never have done to let him walk through the woods and risk his being seen by anybody. As the Tanuki had foretold, buyers were many, and the fox handed him over to the person who offered the largest prize, and hurried to get some food with the money. The buyer took the Tanuki back to his house, and throwing him into the corner, went back out. Directly the Tanuki had found he was alone, he crept cautiously through a chink in the window, thinking, as he did so, how lucky it was that he was not a fox and was able to climb. Once outside, he hid himself in a ditch till it grew dusk, then galloped away into the forest. While the food lasted, they were all three happy as kings, but there soon arrived a day when the larder was as empty as ever. "It is my turn to pretend to be dead," cried the fox. So the Tanuki changed himself into a peasant and started for the village, with his wife's body hanging over his shoulder. The buyer was not long in coming forward, and while they were making the bargain, a wicked thought darted through the Tanuki's head, that if he got rid of the fox, there would be more food for him and his son. So as he put the money in his pocket, he whispered softly to the buyer that the fox was not really dead, and that if he did not take care, she might run away from him. The man did not need trolling twice. He gave the poor fox a blow on the head, which put an end to her, and the wicked Tanuki went smiling to the nearest shop. In former times he had been very fond of his little son, but since he had betrayed his wife, he seemed to have changed all in a moment, for he would not give him as much as a bite, and the poor little fellow would have starved had he not found some nuts and berries to eat, and he waited on, always hoping that his mother would come back. At length some notion of the truth began to dawn on him, but he was careful not to let the old Tanuki see anything, though in his own mind he turned over plans from morning till night, wondering how best he might avenge his mother. One morning, as the little Tanuki was sitting with his father, he remembered, with a start, that his mother had taught him all she knew of magic, and that he could work spells as well as his father, but perhaps even better. "I'm as good a wizard as you," he said suddenly, and a cold chill ran through the Tanuki as he heard him, though he laughed and pretended to think it was a joke. But then the little Tanuki struck to his point, and at last the father proposed that they should have a wager. "Change yourself into any shape you like," he said, "and I will undertake to know you. I will go and wait to the bridge which leads over the river to the village, and you shall transform yourself into anything you please, but I will know you through any disguise." The little Tanuki agreed and went down to the road which his father had pointed out. But instead of transforming himself into a different shape, he just hid himself in a corner of the bridge, where he could see without being seen. He had not been there long when his father arrived and took up his place near the middle of the bridge. And soon after, the king came by, followed by a troop of guards and all of his court. "Aha! He thinks that now he has changed himself into a king I shall not know him," thought the old Tanuki, and as the king passed in his splendid carriage, borne by his servants, he jumped upon it, crying, "I have won my wager! You cannot deceive me!" But in reality, it was he who had deceived himself. The soldiers, convinced that their king was being attacked, seized the Tanuki by the legs and flung him into the river, and the water closed over him. And the little Tanuki saw it all, and rejoiced that his mother's death had been avenged. And then he went back to the forest, and if he has not found it too lonely, he's probably still living there.